Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. So this week I want to talk about all about timing, like I've talked about in other videos, but specifically this time on the selling portion of the timing. So that is just as important as when to know when to sell and when to know when to buy. So right now I think is the pivotal time to sell standard cards. And let me show you why. Now, Standard always does this every rotation. Right after things rotate, things spike up in value. For a reference, we can come over here to the, go over here to prices and price lists, and we can look at something like Kaladesh. We can look at something like Aether Revolt, even Amonkhet Hour of Devastation. Let's go ahead and look at one of those for a second here. Let's pick Aether Revolt. So Aether Revolt flatlines out. Here's where it was started to draft. And then come rotation time, right when the set rotates, then the value spikes back up. So it went from $132 at the low, $132, all the way up to $160 after this little rotation when Ixalan came in and rotated the Shadows and Battle for Zendikar sets out. And so we're experiencing that sort of thing right now in Standard. We are past the week one. We're into week two, week three of the standard results. In fact, we're starting to get a bit of a meta established, and you can start to see exactly what cards have solidified their slots and what cards maybe have not. And I think that it's a pivotal time to get out on both the ones that have found a slot. They probably spiked up in value to where they're going to be at their highs, and then the cards that of course did not find a shell, it's time to get out of those as well. If you can even find buyers for that one's going to be pretty rough to find buyers. There is another, of course, when other sets come out that are highly impactful that can change metas, things can spike up though. But this you're going to see very, very similar in a lot of, let's just zoom in a little bit here. You're going to see this sort of increase a lot where it goes up. Zoom out, that's actually bad here. Where this actually happens at rotation. So let's go and check some of the others let's go to Amonkhet, and you can see rotation occurred right here, 197 up to 220. Then we can go to Hour of Devastation, and we have the 161, and then all the way on to about 178. And this is the last set before rotation happened. I believe even Kaladesh, which was open like crazy, did a very similar thing. We can check on specific Kaladesh cards at rotation. Here happened at rotation. It went from 190 up to about 215. We click on Chandra. I'm sure we'll find a rotation spike. Yep, rotation happened right here, and the card went up quite significantly. And you can just go and check all these for kind of the proof is in the pudding for these type of cards. So let's look at Standard. Let's go over to the price list of Standard at the moment, and you can see a lot of these are at their all-time highs. You can check and see recent sets like Core 2019, and we have a bunch of cards that are at their highs at the moment, especially the ones that have seen a lot of play, specific ones like Vivian Reed. Vivian Reed is seeing play between 2 to 4 copies. I'd say 1 to 4 in most of the Golgari mid-range decks. So of course it is spiked up in value all the way from $8 all the way to 20. And this was a buyout, I'm sure, after the results came in. I think that this is a safe one to get rid of Vivian. Vivian's a little bit iffy because it is a Planeswalker in a set that was not heavily opened, but Vivian did not have a spot pre-rotation. And the more cards I think that are going to enter into the Standard pool, I think it's going to be the harder to justify Vivian. I think it's just a metagame call at the moment, as we've seen these Golgari mid-range decks really take over the meta, and they're competing with some of the blue-red tempo or blue-white control decks for their slots. So a card like Vivian that has the recurring value of either destroying a flying creature, which is very significant with Drakes in the format, and Niv Mizzet is actually seen a ton of play where it can kill Niv Mizzet without having Niv Mizzet draw a card, and then it can start looking for cards off the top of your library. So Vivian, I'm actually a little bit iffy on. I think it's safe to sell Vivian at the moment, but I mean, this card, if you had Vivian's, it has increased all the way from $8 to $20. And where's the right point with that? We can kind of check some of these Golgari mid-range decks for an example of what is included. This particular one doesn't have any Vivians, but I know I was looking through, this one doesn't have Vivian either now that I'm talking it up. But yep, here's 2 Vivians in the main here. And I've seen some decks have all the way up to 4 of the Vivian because I think it's a great slot. I think that it's a little bit better than playing the Harpooner for killing flying creatures, and just that added effect of being able to kill flying with its -3 makes Vivian a very, very powerful planeswalker right now in this particular meta. Of course, that can shift. I still think we are under a meta that is subject to being kind of exploited. So each week we're going to have a top dog. Definitely this week it was Golgari midrange. It was everywhere in the standard PTQ as well as the standard league. Now these leagues are kind of, you'll see tons of Golgari and tons of Jeskai. The problem with how they're doing data right now, so these are also kind of these Golgari mid-range decks. The problem with how they do data on MTGO is I believe if there are 5 or 10 different cards, it will show up in this list. So it's going to show what they call unique list. They're not going to show duplicates, but if there's enough change, then it's going to show up. And so I think it's going to start to tilt the Golgari midrange and especially the Izzet controls or Jeskai controls into showing probably more of a showing in the meta than there actually is, and less for like red. See, we have like 1 red deck here. That's probably because, or two red decks here. It's probably because the vast majority of red decks share the vast majority of cards, and therefore, let's say even if 50% of the 5-0 finishes were red decks, only 2 of them would show up because of just how they collect data with the how wizards themselves collect data, or actually how they anti-collect data is what I like to call it for the standard meta. But anyway, you can look at bigger lists like the standard PTQ. They definitely show a lot more, and you can see Golgari midrange was everywhere for this week. Just a ton of a 9-0 finish. The only 9-0 finish was a Golgari midrange. A lot of 8-1s and 7-2s. And yeah, basically I even dominated all the 7-2s. There's 1 Jeskai control, 1 white weenie, and Izzet Drake's Jeskai control and a couple mono reds in here. So Golgari midrange is now the kind of deck to beat. I think that it is very customizable. Like this one is using Doom Whisper. Most are having some sort of Vraska's in here, some sort of Find Finality, and removal either in the form of Assassin's Trophy or Vraska's Contempt. And then it has your mid-range creature of choice, followed with either if you want to go the Explore route or just some other cards that clog up the board early. So anyway, let's get back to timing. So right now we can see a lot of cards like the Doom Whisper up to $25. Yes, it's seeing 4 of in a lot of decks. I think cards like this are a definite sell because when you actually go back to price list, we can go back to a first set of let's go to Ixalan. And you can see that there isn't even a card above $25 from Ixalan. And something like Vraska's Contempt had a ton of play in, that was a rare though, not a mythic. So I guess that's not the best one to compare it to. What's the best mythic to compare it to from a first set? I guess Carnage Chart was never even there either. But same thing, that one spiked clear up and then it flatlines out. We can go to other sets like Dominaria where a mythic, it saw a ton of play even after the first few weeks, like the Karn or the Hispannalia, and eventually those even start to go down, even though they continue to see play. So I think cards like Doom Whisper and a lot of cards from the Guilds of Ravnica, it is time to sell off. If you come over here to MTG stocks and we take a look at the expected value, Guilds of Ravnica is still incredibly high. With the average, the market price, meaning the box is going to net you $123 in sales. The low will pay for a box if you're getting them at $90 booster boxes. So Guilds of Ravnica is well above where it's profitable for some to open boxes. It's well above where it's profitable to open up Dominaria. It's well above for Rivals and for Ixalan just to be cracking these boxes to just sell the contents of the cards. So that's pretty crazy right now in the standard environment, being everything but the core 2019, with the market price being profitable for people that can get these, have an outlet to sell without massive fees, and can get these at distributor cost. Speaking of distributor cost, shameless self-promotion here. If you come over to my Patreon, patreon.com/roguedeckbuilder, the $10 and above tier is always eligible to buy product at distributor cost. We also do the market price match for all of my patrons at $10 and above. What that means is I will match the market price for card singles and sell them to you. So if you're looking for cheap, both distributor cards or distributor pricing on sealed product, as well as market pricing on Magic cards, definitely come over to my patreon.com/roguedeckbuilder and become a patron. We have a lot of fun in Discord. To get access to Discord, I a lot of times will give market tips before I will to the YouTube channel, so you get a little bit of a head on my picks, especially for the other channel, the Rogue Market, where I give my Rogue Roundup tips. And I also, in that channel, will talk about spikes that are upcoming. There were some cool spikes in Modern. Won't be talking about in this particular video. There's a couple cards that I think are going to spike up in value, as there were some cool decks, new decks in Modern this week. However, let's get back to the timing. So timing is incredibly important in Magic the Gathering. I think the vast majority of these cards from Guilds of Ravnica, something has to give. If I were to look at the cards right here from it would be Doom Whisperer, I think, would be the main one that has to give. March of Multitudes, depending on how tokens are going to fare. Ral is probably the big one. This is a one of or a two of in most decks. And a lot of these other mythics that are in there, like the Lazov, these ones I think, Dream Eater, these ones, I don't know if they have Divine Visitation especially. These ones have to give in the price, otherwise people are just going to continue to crack boxes. As far as the rares are concerned, Assassin's Trophy, I cannot see holding its price. I think comparing it to something like Vraska's Contempt or Settle the Wreckage or Search for Azcanta is a bad comparison. I think this card, even though it does see the amount of modern play that it does, is going to have kind of the fatal push effect. It starts off incredibly high, and it's just because the box value of both Aether Revolt and now of Guilds of Ravnica is so incredibly high that a $21 rare and an $8 uncommon cannot hold, and then something has to give. There's just so much stuff that is seeing a ton of play in both modern and in standard for these prices to stabilize. The Shocklands are kind of weird too. I really thought that the Shocklands would never have between a $5 to above an $8 even for Steam Vents. However, look at Sacred Foundry at $8.57. How long can this hold? I'm under the impression that it can't, and I think that these are even definite sells. If we come over to even like the Dominaria lands, where we have the Clifftop Retreats at $5, we have the Sulphur Falls, I believe, was at $10 again. Like something in this is going to have to give as well when people finally get their copies. You can go over to like the Kaladesh lands, like Inspiring Vantage and those type of lands, and see how far they fell after they were picked up for their standard season. So I think that right now is a very, very safe time to get out of your standard. The vast majority of them, there's still a few good specs that I think are undervalued because of just how much they see play. I'm still all in on Arclight Phoenix. There's been 3 now lists with Arclight Phoenixes in a row for standard that have done 5-0. For this Is It Drakes and Is It Control, and there's been 2 in a row for this mono red spells for modern. I think this is a card that gets better and better as time goes on, and I think this is actually the low for a mythic that sees this much play. Out of all the cards that are still in the Guilds of Ravnica as far as mythic is concerned, this one seems to be the undervalued. It's seeing more play than Dream Eater, for example, and probably more trail than probably more play than even something like Nullhide Ferox or Ral. Is it Viceroy? So, Atroz is another one that seems okay. I think this is something that's easily pushed out of this place. I've even seen people use Benelish Marshall and the Loxodon and replaces something like Teferi. Again, going down these though, lots of these cards, seeing tons of play. Something though has to give. Mission Briefing, I'd get out of those ones in particular. If you're looking for a more condensed version, the market recap this week, it'll probably come out tomorrow because I'm so late getting this video out that it's more like Market Tuesday. That will come out tomorrow, and I'm going to give you 10 picks that I think are the best to sell at the moment. Probably from standard. Maybe we'll even pick some modern cards right now. So timing though, as you can see, it's just as important. What happens though, we can go back to, let's just take Kaladesh. Let's go back over to the Kaladesh. And it was kind of a first set that blew up. Let's see what it did. At its release, it went all the way up. Yeah, I remember Kaladesh was such a hot set. And yes, this did have masterpieces in. And this was a format-defining set, Kaladesh was. And same with Aether Revolt. Some people say that Kaladesh didn't really get to shine until we got the Aether Revolt. But we did see like the Scrap Heap Scrounger, and we did see Smuggler's Copter and Unlicensed Disintegration all come out the gates. And we're selling for very, very high. Same thing with Chandra. It was put into a lot of decks right off the bat. And if we look at Chandra, that card spiked up like crazy. Well, it had the good pre-selling, then sold back down all the way down to 20. This card was seeing a ton of play right out the bat for standard. So I think this is a good comparison to something like Doom Whisper. The 20 is probably the ceiling for these type of sets. Yes, there isn't the Invocations, Masterpieces, and Expeditions. So that's going to hold the price up for sets like this. But with Standard being in the as healthy as it is, not only is it a like good diverse meta, it's also a fun meta if you've played it. Yeah, there's a few decks that are unfun to play against, but that's just the Teferi control decks in my opinion. Some people do prefer. Usually even when there's a control deck that's viable, those Standards are actually quite popular, especially in the competitive scene because the competitive players like it. So if we're looking at some of these cards that lands, for example, they came out the gates selling about $6.50, and even these flatlined down to about $3.50. They started going back up again after the sets were opened up like crazy. So, I mean, there will be a time to get back into all the Guilds of Ravnica. This is going to continue to be drafted as a 3-of for many, many months to come. This first set is the long set. This next one won't last as long without interruptions with other sets and other products. We don't have like another product coming out that is going to really... we're looking until late November until products are going to start to compete with the Guilds of Ravnica, and you're actually going to get even more Guilds of Ravnica products that are going to be flooded back into the system. So you can definitely come look at most of these Kaladesh cards, and they started to all of them petered off right after their release and then started to go down in value. We even have like the Sihili, that one spiked back up because the combo, but I think the combo is still legal all the way through here, and it continued to drop. What I'm trying to say is that Mythics, in this day and age, with how often cards are open, Mythics have a hard time hitting that $25 mark, let alone like $50 mark if you're looking for the Doom Whisper. I mean, there is the exception of if we go back over to Dominaria. Dominaria, we did have a couple of Mythics, but one thing, there was no Expeditions that were opening. Dominaria apparently had a lot of a lot of product open. It was one of the most popular pre-releases of all time. I think it was the biggest pre-release of all time according to Wizards, and it had one of the fastest like what we call like the first wave printing that sold out, where they had to do that second wave and get more product into the hands of the distributors. But things like Teferi, yeah, this card was mainly both, it was double dipping in Modern and in Standard, and again it flatlined at this 40 and then continued to go down to about 35, and now since Dominaria is not the new set, that's when it's gone back up. I still think it's hard for Teferi to continue to climb, and when Teferi was climbing here, everything else out of Dominaria was crashing because Teferi held the vast majority of the EV of a Dominaria box. So I think we're going to see a lot of similar cards, and not to mention, I think Dominaria is, a lot of these Mythics are due for cards continuing to go down. Cards like Karn hasn't seen it sees still a few decks here and there. People are still stubbornly holding on to Karn because they think it could be a 4-of again. Cards like Lyra, I think, is the best time to get out. You've already made your double up off Lyra, time to get out. The History of Benalia, same thing. It still sees a ton of play, but the $25 mark might be as high as this Mythic can go when we still have a 50 and a few other $25 cards in Dominaria. So this is the set that I'm definitely looking at for cards to go down. Maybe even cards like the Mox Amber and all these other Mythics are cards that are going to have to get a hit as well. Or we're looking at a lot of the rares that if this continues to be open, that are going to be get hit. One thing I do like about this set, though, is it is things to come. You can tell that a lot of the cards that hit the color pairings nicely, I think that especially cards like History of Benalia and Lyra hit nicely because they go well in Celestia and Boros decks. I think it's time, too, you should start looking at the cards out of the guilds that are coming out in the next guild or next Ravnica set that are could definitely see play. I like cards that like the Merfolk. Merfolk are... Rakdos seems okay. The only problem with Rakdos Pirates is I don't think that we're going to have any pirates spoiled in the... Why can't I think of the next set? The next Ravnica set that's coming out. And the same thing with Merfolk. Merfolk, I think, just has bad mana at the moment. There probably will be Merfolk, though, because the Simic Guild usually does have a number of Merfolk in them. So I think the duh picks, if you're looking for cards to pick up, the Isolated Chapel, the Hinterland Harbor, I'd be going all in on these cards because the reference point is quite easy to see where they go. Clifftop Retreat went all the way from a $2 card to a $5 card. We have the Woodland Cemetery that went from a $3 card all the way to $6 card. So those are all double ups. So I think that all of the Glacial Fortress out of all the enemy colored lands out of Dominaria and all the the ally cooldowns of Ixalan are something you should be definitely looking at and picking up for the next set to come out. So what I talk about timing is if you can move all of your trade value, all the cards you're not using for standard brews at the moment or whatever, start moving those into the knowns, all the knowns. Like we know that Simic is coming out. We know that Rakdos is coming out. We know that Orzhov is coming out. That Dominarian Knight that's a bulk rare right now looks pretty good. The 4/4 that can kill if we get more Knights out of Orzhov. Typically we do have Knights out of Orzhov. That's a good known that we can work with. There is cards like Sarkon's Unsealing that just screams, break me in Gruul, 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 Gruul. Gruul usually always has a big creature. They always have a 7-power creature, and they always have an undercosted creature. So this could be the card that pushes Sarkon's Unsealing. Also, mana gets so much better with Sarkon's Unsealing. So that's the type of cards I'd be looking at as far as timing is concerned, moving the value in the cards that are already spiked up and putting them in some of these that may even be more high risk, but usually you got to think that they're going to have a payoff. Typically, Ravnica always has one dragon in this. We'd have a dragon that was in an uncommon dragon, but typically there's always a mythic dragon out of one of the Ravnica sets, and that could also be something that you could look at like Sarkon or some of these other dragons to pair with. All the other color combinations of 3-color dragons, those actually look good for cards from the core set, Core 2019. Some of those dragons, both the Naya and the Jund dragon, for example. So again, for a more overlook of cards that I'm specifically moving out of, come check out the Rogue Market video for the Market Monday wrap up. I think that'll be more streamlined. It will be more to the point, and I'll just give you my more in detailed picks of what I'd get out of. But the whole rule of thumb here is this is right here. Week 2, week 3 is usually the time that these cards completely go to their top, and then we're going to start to see some of these start to flame out completely or start to go down just because more product continues to be open. There's a ton of sealed GPs coming up, for example. There's a ton of sealed events, whether it be PTQs or if they're still doing the PPTQs. There's still a lot of events at stores, drafts and sealed. There's leagues going on at stores. All of these things are going to enter a ton of more product into the mix. And it's also very profitable. And I think that mass box openers are going to like this Guilds of Ravnica a lot more than like crossing their fingers and hoping that they open up a lot of masterpieces or expeditions or invocations to break even, because that's kind of where all the value was held in the past. So with all those put together, I think this is a great time to start to sell off of most of the cards from Guilds of Ravnica, Dominaria, and Ixalan. I think they've hit their peaks. Yes, there will be some changes in the meta. You have to kind of follow that. But if you invest into the cards that I have been talking about on these Market Monday, we're going to do a kind of an audit on our September picks now that we're kind of in the mid-October, getting towards the end of October, for both the Rogue Market channel and for the Market Monday, and see how well we did. A lot of these did have double ups. There's a lot to brag about. I'm looking forward to selling Card Kingdom back a bunch of the cards that I bought for them when they're having their standard sale for sets like Core 2019 and Dominaria. Bought a lot of 25-cent and 35-cent cards that went up to $2, $3, $4, and then I'm thinking about doing kind of a Card Kingdom game. They give a 30% extra in-store credit if you instead of getting cash. And I'm thinking about doing this rinse and repeat, because speaking of timing, Card Kingdom seems to be on this very predictable pattern. They have a lot of fire sales when Magic starts to get slow. So like when a Commander set comes out and everyone starts getting Commander, their standard was dirt cheap. Right now, some of their modern cards are pretty cheap comparatively to where they've been. And talk about a company that has a wide range of when they sell very extremely high and then they blow out cards. And I think that's something I want to learn to see if I can kind of play this game. I'm thinking about putting like $100 into Card Kingdom, and then just rinse and repeat selling back their cards for that 30% store. The thing about Card Kingdom too, why I'm picking on them personally, is their spread tends to be very, very small when cards are hot. So they'll have a terrible buy list when cards are cold, but usually their buy list and their sell list is still, like I said, you can get cards for super, super cheap. Cards like the Thorn Lieutenant I was picking up for like $1 something, and now I can buy list them directly to, let's find that card real quick while we wrap this video up, the Thorn Lieutenant. This is one of the cards I picked to invest in, and I bought it for insanely cheap, and now you can sell it back to Card Kingdom for $3. So I got in for like $1, Bought the 8 copies. I think I bought 8 copies twice. So I bought 16 of them from Card King because they do cap you at 8. And I believe it's a triple up about this point for Card Kingdom. And if you go for in-store credit, you get an additional 30%. So that's $4, I believe, is the buy list for, or 33%, usually 30%, however they do it. It'll be like around $4 for the Thorn Lieutenant. So it's something that I'm gonna definitely try out, where, you know, kind of rinse and repeat. There's been some people tell me, they've been warning me that Card Kingdom will send you cards and then grade that exact same package they send you a lot more strict than what they sent it. We'll have to wait and see, because I think that's one thing, is that they grade their lightly played versus near mint a lot worse of a spread than the usual like 5% or 10% difference. So anyway, that'll be a video for another day. I hope you learned a lot with this video. Not a lot I had with this. The main thing, the TLDR of this video could have been from the very get-go. Standard is kind of maxed out. We have all the data here. You can go and check anything that you're not using for standard, anything that is starting to fall off the meta. I think is a good time to get out of these cards and leave the last 25% for someone else. That's kind of, I know that's like a Corbin Hostler, I believe, is the one that came up with that expression. He's been in the MTG finance world forever, and that's kind of been my attitude as well. As, yeah, sometimes you kick yourself when a $30 card goes up to a $40 card, but it's usually a lot safer to get out of the $30 card at $30 than cross your fingers and hope it goes up to 40. And the same thing can be said for like a $3 card or a $10 card, or leave that last 25% for someone else when it starts to hit this value. Yeah, Vivian, if you spec'd into him, this is a great sell-off point. You doubled up, and it could go up to 25, but that's that last 25% that's very, very risky. It's more likely to actually level off or go down. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure again to check out the Rogue Market Recap over at my second channel. And if you are interested, I highly, highly encourage you to at least check out the Patreon, patreon.com/roguedeckbuilder. I try to give back. I'm not one that wants to e-beg. If you sign up for my Patreon, you definitely will get your money's worth if you use it. So all the people that are signed up for the Crack a Pack, you get a pack cracked for you and sent to you. All the people above that are at the $10 mark can buy a booster box at cost. So right there, $87 ship for $10. You're basically buying a booster box for $97 and supporting the channel. And then once you're up in the $20 tier, you get a ton of options for distributor pricing. Same thing with 25 and above. So definitely go check that out. I think it'll be worth your while if you spend any sort of money on Magic. And of course, the market price match is something too. If you're looking for decks, completed decks, we'd love to scratch your back. Here at Gone Rogue Games, we are sick and tired of getting killed by the eBay fees and the TCG player fees and all those. So if we can find a better outlet, we'll actually, waive the fees and pass those savings on to those that do want cards. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.